Alrighty, so moving along with our development process, in this video we'll cover step 2 of developing the JPA entities for country and state. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and swing into our IntelliJ IDE. Let me zoom in here for a second. So we'll move into our source main Java, our package, and we're going to add some new classes in this entity package. So I'll just create a new class here. And the name of this class is country. And I'll just expand my window here. So this is our JPA entity. So up top, I'll make use of the @entity annotation and also the @table annotation to map it to a given table. And I'll also make use of Lombok here to generate the getters and setters for me. Okay, so let's go ahead and define the fields here for ID, code, and name. And then I'll just go ahead and set up the JPA mappings here for mapping these fields to given columns. And so ID is our primary key, so that's our @ID and the @generated value here. Now I'll just kind of copy paste that @column X number of times, and I'll simply change the name here. So ID, code, and name. So those are the 3 columns that we're mapping to in our database table. Okay, so the coding for this entity class looks pretty good. Now there's one thing that we have to do as we need to set up our one-to-many relationship because one country has many states, but for right now, I'll just leave it as a comment. I won't write the code yet. I'll wait until I create the class for state, and then I'll come back and take care of this to-do. But at least it's here to remind me that I have more work to do. Now let's move back to this entity package. Let's create a new Java class for state. And so this is a very similar process to what we did for country, right? So we'll simply give our JPA annotations. And then I'll make use of the @data annotation from Lombok. And the same drill, I set up the fields here for the table. And so for the country ID, this is actually going to map back to the given country object. So we'll add a special annotation there. I'll come back to that in a second. But let's go ahead and just put the basic annotations in place right now. So for our primary key field ID, and then I'll just copy that column and put it here above name. And so name equals name. All right. And now this many to one relationship, because many states belong to one country. So @many to one, and then the join column will join on country ID. That's the actual column that we're joining on in the state table. And so that country ID maps back to the actual country table as a foreign key relationship. Okay, so now that our state's in place, now we can kind of swing back to that to-do statement that we had, and we can kind of resolve it now. So in country.java, that's where I'm at right now. Down at our little to-do, I'll kind of zoom in here for a bit, and I'll make use of this one-to-many. And this is going to be mapped by country. And so we have a list of states that are mapped by the country. Alrighty, and I can remove the to-do because we're done with it. All right, so this looks pretty good so far with setting up that one-to-many relationship. And yeah, so we're pretty much done with writing the code here for our JPA entities for country and state. So we set up the basic fields, and we also set up the relationships of one-to-many and many-to-one. Alrighty, good job.